Okay. Hi everyone, and welcome to the Spring Local Network Meeting, our webinar for the Primary Languages Network. Just to let you know that I'll be going through some resources tonight to do with dragons and unicorns. This was a child-generated topic. It came about because I spoke to children in school and they gave me some suggestions of things that they would like to do to learn the foreign language in. And one of the ones that was really, really popular with all the children, I'm sure you're aware of it as well, is that unicorns have been a huge thing at the moment. I know my daughter wanted lots of unicorn paraphernalia for Christmas, so we decided to go ahead with the Dragons and Unicorns theme. All the resources I'm going to show you tonight can be found for network members by logging onto the VLE and going into the network resources folder, then going to the network meetings and webinars folder, and then within that folder you will find the folder entitled Dragons and Unicorns 2018. All the resources tonight come in French and Spanish, and they all have sound files as well. So if anyone's feeling a bit nervous with the language side of delivering Dragons and Unicorns units or scheme of work, then you've got native speaker sound files on all PowerPoints that I'm going to show you tonight. If you aren't a network member, you can get access to these resources through the Primary Languages Network homepage and clicking on Active Lingo, and we do have access to the resources there, Dragons and Unicorns. There's a small fee there for non-network members. So there we go, Dragons and Unicorns. I think I'm just going to go for it tonight. So in case I've not already introduced myself, my name is Robert Artisol. Some of you might have seen me before and come across me. I'm a primary languages teacher. My specialism is Spanish, so I probably will show you most of the resources in Spanish tonight because it's where I feel most comfortable. But the resources are available in French as well and there for you to use. Okay, so there's several resources I want to go through tonight. These resources are a PowerPoint to do with prepositions in foreign language. Some resources to do with describing dragons and unicorns, and a story that we've written called The Lost Unicorn. And there's actually two versions of the story. One that's kind of like a comic book version, and one that's kind of like a formal kind of children's book version with the text. There are also, when you look for network members, when you look in the folder, there are also some resources that you might be familiar with that were shown before, but we thought they kind of fit the topic and we put them in there too. So we've also put in there a whole unit to do with dinosaurs, which is great for Key Stage 1. And the lesson plans to go with that and all the resources that you might need. And there's also a How to Train Your Dragon unit that has been showcased at our summer Primary Languages Network meeting, usually held at the hotel in Warrington. And that's to do with, it's a poem, a performance poem, all to do with how to train your dragon, and there's some sound files in there for you to use to have a look at your leisure. But the main things that I'm going to show you tonight, the prepositions PowerPoint, the describing dragons and unicorns PowerPoint, and the Lost Unicorn story. So I'm going to move on. So, as I just previously mentioned, we have got a whole unit of work in that folder called How to Train Dragon. Some of you might have seen that before in our summer meeting. And as you can see here from the PowerPoint, we've just got a few resources that you can use there. I'm not going to spend too long on this. You can have a look at that at your leisure because we have shown this before, but it kind of fits in with the topic. There is a poem there, How to Train Your Dragon, which describes different things that the dragon can do. And Emily, one of our French teachers, has used that in class, and she's actually used the app, My Dragon Toy, and brought the dragon to life in class. So a good resource there if you've got children who are really interested in dragons. The first resource I want to show you tonight is our Donde está el dragón, or Where is my dragon, okay, resource. And this came about because I was teaching prepositions to Year 6 after Christmas. And it was actually the Year 6 children that I was teaching at the time that I was asking them what would they like to what theme would they like to learn the foreign language in Spanish? And a lot of them did come back with dragons and unicorns. It was a theme that the children generated. So I thought, well, fair enough, let's do that then, and somehow kind of linking prepositions with it. So you've got a prepositions PowerPoint here. I'm just going to go over to that now. And it's kind of written in the style of a story. I was kind of thinking of, you know, those young children's story like Daisy, etc., kind of simple, repetitive pattern. So the way I use this with the children in class was that, first of all, I introduced a PowerPoint and we went through the PowerPoint and discussed what the meaning of the preposition might be in each sentence. So, for instance, we got the children to look at the sentence, we listened to the sound file by the native speaker, and then we tried to guess where the preposition was and which was a preposition in the sentence. So a really good story there that you can go through with your children and get them to guess where the dragon is, and at the end of the story you can see that the dragon is hiding behind the table. Once I'd introduced the prepositions to the children, we worked out what they all were. We kind of did the usual things of introducing the new words in the foreign language. So we looked at all the prepositions. So you can see here we've got them in Spanish, underneath the table, behind the table, on top of the table, side of the table, and in front of the table. And the children came up with their own actions to help remember where the dragon is, or to help remember the prepositions. It was really good, this, actually, because it does help reinforce their own knowledge of SPAG, but it helps reinforce that understanding of prepositions in their own language when you do go through this with them. But the children, when I was doing it with my class, the action that the children came up with was that they had one flat hand held out in front of them, so your left hand, and they made the other hand in the fist. And the fist kind of demonstrated the preposition. So if they put the fist below the hand, that would be debajo de, behind the hand, so detrás de, and on top of the hand, encima de. And we did those little actions, and we did the usual things like Simon says, and then they'd mime one to the partner and get the partner to say it, just to practice those prepositions. After that, on the final slide of the PowerPoint, you'll see that there is kind of like a sentence structure slide. So this was a really good slide to help children see how to structure prepositions within a sentence. So the children could choose to have the dragon or the unicorn, and then they've got the verb it is, and then they've got the prepositional positions there with it in the middle, and they've got a little picture there to show what each preposition represents, just to help them remember. And then I chose three common classroom objects to put at the end of the sentence. We've got a table, a chair, and a book there. Once we started constructing sentence, I gave the children some sentences on slips. I wrote some out and typed them up and gave them to children, and they went around the class miming the sentences to the partner. So we came up with an action for dragon where we flapped our wings, and we came up for an action with unicorn where we put our finger on top of our forehead and that was our horn. And then we came up with an action for like table, chair, and book, etc. And then the children went around the class and they were miming these sentences to each other, and the partner had to guess the sentence in the foreign language, so in either Spanish or French. And then they would say that sentence to them, and if they got it right, then they'd swap sentences. And it was quite a nice little activity, really, and the children really enjoyed doing that and really helped reinforce prepositional phrases. Once I'd done that with them and they'd got that kind of idea and that kind of fixed sentence structure within the head, then I challenged the children to create their own prepositional phrases. So I gave the children little cutouts of the dragons and the unicorns, and the children then used iPads and they took the dragons and unicorns around the class and they put them in different positions within the class. So I'll just get you, I think I've got some pictures here somewhere. Yeah. So they use iPads, and an app that I like using and I've used before in past is PicCollage. And the children took pictures of where they put their dragons and unicorns. So you can see this one here, they put it on the table, etc. And then they wrote their own sentences to describe where the unicorn or the dragon was in each situation. I just find that PicCollage is, I do use it quite a lot in quite a few of my lessons, and I just find it quite a fun way to engage children in writing the foreign language. We did do some formal written work after this, where the children got some pictures in the book of the unicorns and dragons and actually wrote out the sentences, prepositions. But I think as a starting point to motivate them, they could take the pictures, take ownership of that. And then the children did some dictionary work, because they didn't just want to put the unicorn underneath the chair or behind the book or behind the table, which were the free nouns that I'd given them beforehand. So then that was a good opportunity to use dictionaries, and then the children started to put the unicorn on the shelf. or they started to put the dragon underneath the computer. But then they had to look for other nouns to put at the end of the sentence, which was really good for that. And then some of the children started asking for other prepositions, then, which I hadn't taught them and aren't on the PowerPoint, but then they started to independently look for things like in between, because they wanted, or far away from, and they wanted to challenge themselves to do other ones there. So that was a really fun activity that the children did. And if you've got iPads in school, it's a great opportunity to mix technology with language learning. One thing that I did with some year sixes in a different school that I was teaching, we don't have iPads in that school, and the children wanted to create their own scene with dragons and unicorns. So we created these little trioramas that you can see here, which are really simple. I'm sure probably lots of you have made them before, where you just cut out a square of paper, and then the children, a bit like when you're making a fortune teller, and obviously you fold it in half twice to get the cross across the centre of the paper. And if you cut one slit to the centre, you can fold it up to make this kind of 3D perspective of a writing frame. So the children I did this with, I kind of modelled one to them on the board, and I said to them, well, right, we're going to do a fantasy scene of dragons and unicorns, and put them in different positions. So these children have drawn their own fantasy scenes with different dragons and unicorns in. And they might have put the dragon behind a tree, or on a cloud, or the unicorn on a rock, or in front of a mountain. And as you can see from some of these examples here, the children then use that repetitive sentence structure to write a short paragraph. So they put the short paragraphs in the trioramas. And again, just another fun way to kind of engage the children in writing and learning the foreign language. You know, these ideas have been done before, but they do work, don't they? And I'm sure lots of you have used them in your class with your children. But it just kind of takes that work from the textbook and kind of puts it in a different, it puts it in a more dynamic way, I suppose, and makes it more bespoke to other lessons that they do. And we've got them on display now in class, which is quite nice, and they've got them on the side. And usually when I go back in for my Spanish lessons, we might do some warm-ups at the start of lessons with the prepositional phrases there. If you were feeling worried about doing prepositional phrases, as I said at the start, all the sound files have been attached to the PowerPoint by native speakers. So I have to thank Emily here, our French teacher, for doing all the sound files on the French prepositional PowerPoint. And I also have to thank Irene for her sound files on the Spanish prepositional PowerPoints. And I do have to say a huge thank you to Anna as well, one of our Spanish teachers, for her fantastic illustrations that she's done on all the PowerPoints that you're going to see tonight. So that's prepositions for you. I hope you find that useful if you use it, class. The next one that I'd like to move on to tonight is describing dragons and unicorns. So with this, we have put in the folder a whole PowerPoint all to do with describing dragons and unicorns. I'm just getting it on my screen now. And if you were following the Primary Languages Network scheme of work, this one fits in nicely with Year 4 Spring 2 when you're describing body parts. So it might be something that you want to do to replace that scheme of work, or run alongside it, or to do in addition with it, because it kind of links in nicely when they're describing the alien body parts, that they can describe the unicorn and dragon body parts. I'm actually doing this with my Year 5 and 6s at a school that I work at the moment, and they're really enjoying it and they're getting lots out of it. And what I'm finding with this unit for my Year 5 and 6s that I'm dealing with at the moment, it's becoming a really good consolidation activity for things that they've done in the past, like colours, like masculine and feminine, singular and plural rules, and also adjectival agreement in the foreign language. Excuse me. Now, again, this has got sound files on it. So if anyone's feeling a bit nervous about the pronunciation in the foreign language, a great way to start with this is that when we're looking at the body parts, is that you can play the sound files and get your children to listen to them. I started this unit by introducing the body parts to the children in my Year 5 and 6 classes. There are several ways you can do this. Obviously, this is the kind of old, tried and tested traditional way of introducing the body parts, teaching it to the children with an action, doing the actions, playing Simon Says, playing Chinese whispers, all those kind of things that get the children to respond to the spoken language, which if you don't feel confident saying it, we have got the sound files there so that you can play the words individually and get the children to do response to them. Alternatively, you could show them this slide of the PowerPoint where you've just got the body parts, talk about what body parts they might be of the dragon or unicorn, and then the children can use dictionary work, use bilingual dictionaries to try and find those body parts. And once you give them a few minutes to do that, then the children can kind of compare it to the ones that they see in French or Spanish. I'm just going to go back here. So yeah, so to begin with, I introduced all the body parts for this to the children, and we played lots of games to practice them. And one of the things that I like to do, as you can probably see here, is that I like the children to make their own games quite a lot. So if I show you this picture here, which is quite a nice one, I've used this in maths, I've used this in all sorts of things over the years when I've been a class teacher, but this is just a simple card game. So, you know, like your usual memory game where you have to have the cards, you match pairs together. So I cut up a lot of cards for the children and give them to them in small groups, and basically put a picture on one card and they put the Spanish word or the French word or phrase on the other card, and they make their own cards and then they turn them over. Every time they turn them over, I say to them, well, you have to say that for your partner to get a pair, they have to say the word in the foreign language. So it's a good way for children to practice language, and that's quite a nice lesson actually then, because once they've made the cards and they can play it, they can swap partners and play it with a different pair, etc., and continue practicing the nouns. So just a good way for to get a real good understanding of the nouns there. One thing I did do when I was looking at this with the children is that we looked at the determiner, so the word for a before each noun there. So we're creating a noun phrase there because we've got the determiner and we've got the noun in each case. I did ask the children to look at the difference between the determiners in each case. So obviously in this one we've got unas garras, unas alas, una cola, un cuerno. And I asked the children to spot the difference between those determiners. Now, by year 5 and 6, the children, if they're following the primary languages network scheme of work, and possibly whatever it is that you do in school, will be really familiar with masculine and feminine nouns in the foreign language, in French and Spanish. I know today that I was teaching animals to year 3, and one of the activities I was doing was masculine and feminine, and we were looking at the un and una. So it's something that children already have in kind of like their language currency. It's like it's terminology that they're familiar with already. The children I was teaching year 5 and 6 quite quickly picked up on this, that, oh, well, some of them are plural, some of them are singular, some of them are masculine, some of them are feminine, and we talked about the rules a little bit to do with that. For some of your children that you might be teaching in class, that might be a step too far, and you might just want to keep them with just the body parts. And if that's the stage that your children are at, that's totally fine. You don't have to take them to that level. Once you've taught the body parts and done lots of games, the next activity that you might want to move on to is, I'm thinking for possibly year 3s, and even if you want to deliver this in year 2, I would possibly just stop at that point and get them to draw their unicorn or their dragon and just label the body parts there. But if you think your children are capable of it, then you can start looking at the determiners or the article there for a, and then discuss the difference with them. Now, I played a little game with this then, because I then put a chart on my board, and I had the word for a in singular, and I had the word for a in plural, in both masculine and feminine. So un, una, unas, unos, or, you know, vice as that would be in French as well. And then I did the usual thing of where I said a body part. So I might have said cola, tail, or I might have said colas, tail. And then the children on whiteboards had to decide which one it would be and write on their whiteboards whether it was un, una, unos, unas. And I also did that ruler game, you know, where you get 2 children to come to the front and you split the class into 2 teams, and whoever touches that one first gets the point for their team. Once I've modelled that a few times for the children, then I got them to write split the whiteboards into 4 parts and write the 4 determiners or indefinite articles on their whiteboards. And then in pairs, as I said, a body part, they touch the right one. So it was a great way for them to practice matching the correct determiner with the corresponding noun in the foreign language. So it's quite a nice activity, really, just to get them to practice that. Obviously, we don't have that in English, where where we have masculine, feminine, singular, plural with our determiners, in the sense that they have it in French and Spanish. So it's a really good activity for them to get their heads around that. And I actually did that with my year threes today when I was doing animals with them. If you want to take it further than that, you could start looking at, I'm just going to close this down one moment while I've moved a bit further on. Okay. After that, I started looking at expanded noun phrases with the children. So expanded noun phrases, again, terminology that the children are very familiar with in school, because obviously it's one of their targets from Key Stage 2, from early Key Stage 2 onwards. So it kind of, again, reinforces that SPAG knowledge. So to begin with, I put this on the board. We've got this in French and Spanish on the PowerPoint. And we looked at why it was different in each case. So I asked the children to spot the differences here. And the children could straight away tell me that, yeah, they've got the different determiners because we did that kind of activity beforehand where they were playing games with the different determiners. And then we also looked at the colours. Now, to be honest, when I did this lesson, I had it in mind beforehand that I'd revise the colours with them because it's one of those things that you do quite a lot of in year 3, 4, or I tend to find that I do a lot of in year 3, 4, go over the colours quite a lot in lots of units. But I tend to get sidetracked with other things in 5, 6, and we're taking it to that next level that I don't tend to go over the colours that much. But it's quite a nice opportunity to go over the colours with my year 5 and year 6 children. But at the start of that lesson, we revised the colours, and then I said that our learning objective state that we're going to do expanded noun phrases in Spanish. But first of all, we had to clarify what an expanded noun phrase was in English, and obviously it's a noun phrase, but we can put one way that an expanded noun phrase can be made is that we do a noun phrase with the determiner and the noun, and then we put our adjective in. So then I showed this one on the board where we've got our 4 sentences here in the foreign language. And we talked about why they were different. Now, this is challenging, this activity, because in French and Spanish, you have to have adjectival agreement. Now, this is a challenge for some of you that are feeling really ambitious and want to really fly with the foreign languages and really push your children here. For the children that I teach, it wasn't too far of a jump because from year 3 onwards, they're already familiar with the idea of masculine and feminine nouns in the foreign language, and they're also familiar with singular and plural, and they're familiar with changing the determiner to match the noun, okay? And they're already familiar with matching the adjective to match the noun, because my children know that when I teach them in the foreign language that they've got to change. If I'm a boy, I might say I'm tired with an O on the end, cansado, but if I'm a girl, I'm going to change that to an A and say cansada, because there's a difference there with the adjective. When it ends in O, we have to change it to masculine and feminine. So for the children that I teach, doing something like this wasn't too far of a leap. And it did take a while for the children to get their heads around it. But once they've got it, they kind of understand it. So I think that's kind of up to you, really, how far you want to go with this. This PowerPoint is progressive as you go through it when you're describing dragons and unicorns. So you could just stop at the body parts and decide, yeah, that's enough for my children. We've learnt the body parts. We're going to describe them on our dragon and unicorn. Draw a nice little picture. And, you know, that might be as far as you want to go with some children. So getting back to this, so I showed the children 4 sentences and asked them to compare sentences to talk about what was different. And then I did discuss how the adjective has to change to the word amarillo, yellow there in Spanish, has to change to match the noun, whether it is singular or plural or masculine or feminine. So it did take a bit of explaining this, and it took a lot of modelling, and we did lots of modelled sentences together. So I put this on the board to remind the children the word order in the foreign language, that we've got the determiner noun and the adjective that comes after the noun. And to begin with, I just stuck with one colour, and we just did yellow. And I put the noun in, I wrote this on a whiteboard, and the children did it on their mini whiteboards, and they worked in pairs to do it. And I said, well, you know what it is? The determiner and the adjective, they always copy what the noun does. So if the noun wants to be singular and it's a masculine noun, then the adjective's got to copy that and the determiner's got to copy that. And we did lots of work on this. So I wrote on my big teacher's whiteboard in class, I would write some phrases like hoof or hooves in the foreign language, or horn or horns, or wings, etc. in the foreign language. And then the children would have to put in the determiner and adjective. Once we'd done it with yellow and done it with this, using the different determiners here, and practiced that quite a few times, I thought, yeah, I'm quite confident that children are getting this here. So then we talked about different colours in Spanish. And we started looking at words like red, yellow, red, orange, pink, green, etc., all the colours that the children knew. And we started discussing the rules for matching the adjective to the noun. And then we did some more examples together. And I wrote some pairs on the board where I'd written one wrong and one right, and the children had to decide which one was right and explain to me why. So it was kind of like really developing the deep understanding there. And then I got the children in pairs to do 4 sentences together describing the same object. So let's say if they were describing the eyes of the unicorn or the eyes of the dragon or the claws, and the children had to put a different determiner and the different adjectival agreement with the noun each time. And they all did that in pairs, and they wrote 4 sentences, and 3 of them had to be wrong, and one of them was the correct one. So it really got the children to think about them, well, which one is correct and why? Because they were comparing it with their other sentence that they'd done wrong. And then what I did then was, once they'd done their 4 sentences in pairs and the children swapped places, one of them stayed with their whiteboard and the other one went to somewhere else in class. And then they'd challenge the other person to spot the right one and say why. And then the other person would go away then. So there was lots of swapping around, and that was really quite a good fun lesson. And I kind of felt, they didn't always get it perfect, to be honest with you. I kind of felt that they were getting the idea of adjectival agreement in the foreign language there. Like I say, it wasn't too much of a jump for them because they had done similar things before in the past. But it depends on where your children are at with that task. What I did do though, once I'd done that, was there is a great website, and as you can see this picture of a dragon here, and it's called wordart.com. And I asked the children to write an expanded noun phrase for each one of the body parts that a dragon or a unicorn might have. What's great about this website is that you can access it on tablets. So if you've got iPads or tablet computers at your school, you can access through that. But for me, I actually prefer to use it on laptops, and I think the children prefer to use it on laptops too. So with WordArt, what you do is you go to the website and you type in a list of phrases that you want to put in. So you can see on this one here, it's got unas petuñas rosas, so they've got some pink hooves. And the children, they had to do at least 8 expanded noun phrases in the foreign language. And what it does then is you can choose your textile, you can choose your colours, your palette, and then the children chose a dragon or unicorn shape, and then they put their phrases into that shape. So that was really good fun, and it was just quite an interesting way to engage the children, write expanded noun phrases in the foreign language and practice them. By this point, I was building up to the children writing their own description in the foreign language of a dragon or unicorn, of one that they'd drawn themselves. So before I wanted to do the full sentence, I just wanted them to do the expanded noun phrases. For those of you that might go on wordart.com, which can be used for any type of subject really, and can be used for any phrases that you're doing in the foreign language, and some of you might have used it before, but if you're not familiar with it, you can import an image. So there isn't a dragon or unicorn body shape there. But what I discovered with the children when we're doing it in class, when you go to the images section, if you click on import image, and then if you just Google search one, and I typed in dragon shadow or unicorn shadow, and it comes up with a black outline then, which is probably better for that website to use. And then the children can put it in this shape here. But once they've done that, I've only got up to this week, but there is on the PowerPoint, Anna, our illustrator, has drawn. I'm going to go to it. Oh, there's a model one there, sorry. I'll just go back there, screen. Forgot to mention that. So there is a waggle one, what a good one looks like, that the children can look at and try and decipher first of all. And then I went to, I'm probably jumping ahead of myself here. Just bear with me one moment. Oh yeah, so then I introduced the verb tiene. It has, and you've got that in French or Spanish. That is in our year 4 scheme of work, because when you're describing body parts and the children are creating their own alien body parts, they do say it has 2 heads, it has 4 arms, etc., whatever they want to put on their alien, and they do have to pluralise the body parts there. So this would be a nice activity to do instead of that year 4 unit if you wanted to do it instead of that or alongside it. But if your children have been following the primary languages scheme of work, then they should already be familiar with that. So then introduce TNA to the children to put those expanded noun phrases into the sentence. So we could say that our dragon or unicorn has got claws, it's got some wings, it's got a tail, but it doesn't have a horn or it doesn't have hooves. And we were using our conjunctions and but. And once the children got to this stage, we looked at a waggle one, and the children in pairs tried to translate it. From a teaching point of view, I think this would be quite a nice activity if you wanted some evidence in books of translation, to stick that in the books and get the children to translate it first of all. I didn't do that. I just did it very, very quickly because I wanted to move on to this Guess Who game. So this Guess Who game on PowerPoint is really good fun because you've got all the sound files there in the foreign language. Let's see if this one plays for you. I don't know if you can hear that. I'm just going to turn my sound up here. So that was a really nice activity to get the children listening in the foreign language. They really had to concentrate when I was doing that. And I have to thank Irene there for her fantastic sound recordings for the children to listen to. And they really had to think about the descriptions of the different dragons and unicorns, and they had to guess in pairs which one it was and say why. And they'd have that. It was quite a nice discussion, really, that the children had together. And again, it was just kind of modelling to them descriptions in the foreign language before they went ahead and wrote their own. There is actually a resource within the folder where you've got a written version of the descriptions on a worksheet, and you've also got these pictures of the different dragons and unicorns. And the children can cut those pictures out and cut out the descriptions and match them together, which makes quite a nice activity in class. You know, again, you could stick the descriptions in the book and the children could match the descriptions to the right picture in the book and translate them to English. So there's a lot of work you could get out of that. I've not gone to that because the children that I was working with were quite excited to move on just to their descriptions. And to be honest with you, I wanted to get a few examples to show you tonight of things that they've done in class. So once you've gone through kind of all that process of teaching them the nouns, teaching them the expanded noun phrases, and teaching them the verb to say that it has or it doesn't have, and it is, then in the local network meeting folders and webinar folder, you've got a writing frame here that the children can use. So some people like to use writing frames, and especially if you're in a school where the children don't have books for the foreign languages. So I know that different schools have different ways that they record their foreign language teaching. So in some schools, all the children have a book, which is in all the schools that I teach in. And I quite like that bit personally because I think it keeps things quite nice and tidy. But then in my previous school that I used to work at as a year 4 class teacher, we just had one large class book. So when the children done work on sheets, it was quite nice to stick some pictures in, some examples of their work as kind of evidence of things that they've done. But there's a writing frame there for people if you need it. Here's some that I've done with the children class. So I got the children to draw their own dragons and unicorns. And actually, before I did that with the children, just going back a little step, I took one of Anna's pictures here and just enlarged it on one PowerPoint slide by itself. So it's easy enough to copy and paste that and enlarge it. And we did a modelled write together. We did a guided write. So I gave all the children this page, printed that off. Not in colour, otherwise I would have got told off by the head teacher, painted too much colour. But we did it in black and white. So I gave the children one of those 1between2 to help, almost like a word bank to support them while they were writing. And we looked at this unicorn here. We looked at the black unicorn with the white wings and the white tail and the red horn, the blue hooves. And working in pairs, a lot of whiteboard again, really. A bit like you were doing kind of like your English lessons, really, kind of building up to a write in that sense. We did a guided write together, and I said to the children, right, well, how would I say it has white wings? Let's think back to our expanded noun phrases. And then we did a waggle one together that we all wrote together and kind of clarified any kind of misconceptions that the children had. And then the children, I've only just done this week, but they then you can see that they've drawn their own dragons and unicorns and stuck them in the book, okay? And they really did enjoy doing that. I just think because it's a subject that they could engage in and they had a lot of choice in, that they just really enjoyed describing their own descriptions. So it was quite motivating for the children in the foreign language, which for those of you that might have met me or heard of me before or met me at the last Primary Languages Network webinar, anything that kind of turns the children on and gets them excited about learning, that's what I'm all into. And I kind of try and pick subjects and themes that really get the children excited and interested in learning. I'm just going to highlight to you this picture here. This is something that I quite like to do this is something I do quite often. For those times that you want to gather evidence in the book, but maybe you've done a lesson that isn't necessarily evidence-based, lots of talking, lots of speaking and listening, lots of computer work. This is a little slip that I have stuck in the book. You can have. I'm going to stick this PowerPoint on the Primary Languages Network as well for those of you that like to look at it later on. You can zoom in on some of these, have a closer look at them. But this is just explaining that they were doing expanded noun phrases, and I just put in a picture there of the dragon that this pair of children had done in class, where they put the expanded noun phrases in to make that. And what I quite like about this is that you can see the progression then within the book. So you can see where they've just done expanded noun phrases. Now that we're going to full sentences and doing a full paragraph of writing in the foreign language describing a dragon or a unicorn. Now, if you're feeling really ambitious, one way that I challenged some of my children was the ones that had really understood the rule with adjectives in the foreign language. I just told them to use colours basically most of the class. So I was like, just stick to colours. So red wings, a yellow horn, blue hooves, purple eyes, whatever the colour may be. And I thought that was enough for them because they were concentrating so much on the adjectival agreement with the nouns that they were doing. I didn't want them to have to think about other adjectives as well. And colours were familiar language with the children, so it made kind of the task easier. But for those children that were feeling really ambitious, I said to them, well, you can get a dictionary and look for other adjectives in Spanish. Because now that you know that rule for adjectives, you could match any adjective to the noun. So we had lots of children then, well, some of the children, looking for other adjectives in the foreign language. To be honest, I would say a word of warning here. When I did it, because they were so keen to put in the words that they really wanted to do, kind of like a ferocious dragon, etc., because obviously we teach children so much to use all these fantastic adjectives and synonyms. Some of the children then did lose that kind of understanding of the adjectival agreement in the foreign language, and that didn't become the focus because they were focused on the adjectives, which is, fine, because the children are doing dictionary work and they're expanding the vocabulary there in the foreign language. So I'd maybe think about when you mentioned that. I probably mentioned it a bit too early in the lesson, and maybe I should have let them finish first and do it as a challenge, because I did notice one or two of them were so excited about using the dictionary that it stopped them thinking about the adjectival agreement, which I wanted them to really focus on. But I can always go back to this and review it with them, and like you would in kind of like an English lesson, and recheck it. I'm just going to highlight this one on the left. I really like this one, that this person here has found the word giant in the dictionary, and she's pluralized it. And we've got marvelous as well. It's got marvelous hooves, and that we've got a sharp horn. I really like that they've not just put the colours there, but they've gone that extra mile there and found other adjectives that they could use to describe the unicorn there in the foreign language. So that was really good fun, and the children have really enjoyed doing that in class. And I'd like to move on to now the last resource I'm going to show you tonight, which is our story, which is called The Lost Unicorn. Now, I really love contextualizing languages, whether that be teaching English from when I was a class teacher. I'd always love doing it themed around a story or a book. And if I can do it in Spanish, I'll always try and do it in Spanish as well, whether it's a story that I write myself, a very simple story, or whether it's a story that I can get in Spanish, such as The Gruffalo or Room on a Broom, etc., all those kind of really popular children's books. So this story is kind of written in the style of one of those kind of children's picture books. So it's got a repetitive pattern. It's about our alien family member, the little sister from the alien family member, looking for her lost unicorn. And every time she goes up to a different family member, there's 3 family members that she goes to speak to, and each time she says, "Have you seen my unicorn?" And the family member says, "Well, what's it like?" And she describes a particular part of the unicorn. So it kind of follows on from the describing unicorns and dragons. You could do this bespoke, separate from the describing unicorns and dragons kind of unit, or you could do this together with it. And then each time the family member says, I've not seen it, and there's 3 different family members that she goes to. And then at the end, you can see there in French, I'm not going to try and say it because my French is terrible, but she's found the unicorn and she describes it again. At a very, very simple level, this is just a nice little simple story to read to your class. I could imagine doing this with my year 1s and 2s and reading it out in the foreign language, asking what they think it means. In each of the pictures, the little alien girl's got the thought bubble above her head, which has got a picture of that body part. So you can, they can kind of use their inference skills there to kind of decipher what that body part is. Just before I carry on, while I remember, this is in French and Spanish with the sound files again. So it's a really good activity just to play to your children, practice listening to a native speaker in the foreign language. One of the attainment targets from the Department of Education Foreign Language is to listen to stories in the foreign language. So this would be a nice one to do. So again, introducing this to my children, I would get them to listen to respond, maybe try and work it out. With my older children, I think they'd be able to work out pretty much all the language there, especially with my year 5s and 6. I'm going to move on to this next week with them now that they've done the unicorn description. And they can, they'll probably be able to decipher all of that. It's all familiar language that they've learned in years 3 and 4, etc. Now, I think this would make a really nice class performance. So you could give this to the children in groups and get them to perform a section of the story each in class. And then they could then perform that, whether that be to younger children within the school or in an assembly, etc. One of the things that I'm always thinking that they could do with this story, kind of thinking in a talk for right kind of way, is that they could change aspects of it, and they might want to do their own. They might just want to do a scene from the story where they do their own version of it. But this time, the little girl is describing something that they have on their dragon or unicorn. So, for instance, instead of a yellow horn, it might be a red horn, or instead of blue hooves, it might be pink hooves, etc. So then they're using that kind of familiar pattern, but they're adapting it and changing it to their dragon or unicorn. And they could even make that into a mini book. When I've made mini books with the older children in the past, I always think it's quite nice if they can share them. I've always spoke to the reception teachers and said, can we come in and read some of our stories to their children that we've done in Spanish? And I must do that at least once a year with one of my older classes, and it's really a nice afternoon. So if you get the opportunity to do that, I would say if you build up to that point where the children write their own books in the foreign language and maybe change aspects of it, even if it's just the colour, and it's really nice that they can share them with the younger children. One way that you could take this further and differentiate that, a challenge for you if you will, I've not got to this point yet, but I'm looking forward to getting to it, is that there are 2 versions of the story. I'm just going to toggle between the screens here to show you. Where have we gone? Okay. So here's the comic book version that you could see on the PowerPoint then that I was showing you. Oh no, sorry, that's not the comic book version. This is the comic book version. But then this one is the story version. Now, what I like about this one is that it's got the reported clause. So rather than the speech being in a speech bubble, it's got the reported clause saying who said it. So said the girl, said the granddad, said the girl, said the granddad, etc. What I quite liked about this, when we were doing this, I was kind of thinking of my older children here. And I was thinking, would it be nice if they could rewrite part of the story, but look at how speech is set out in the foreign language. Now in Spanish, they use these hyphens for speech. I apologise if my terminology is wrong there, but they use these hyphens for speech to denote direct speech. So I just thought it was quite a nice way to look at the speech in the foreign language. If and when I come to do this with my children, I'm hoping to do it, it'll probably be after half term now. But I thought there's quite a lot here that you could do with the speech. Now, these ideas aren't ideas that I thought of. You can find these online. But I thought, why not use this idea of doing text messaging, speech in the foreign language? And I thought it'd be nice if one lesson, the children could use one of these websites, such as Fake Phone Text or iFakeText.com, which you can access on tablet computers or laptops, and create their own speech between 2 characters in the story. And then they could even change aspects of it again. So again, instead of it being So here we've got tiene un cuerno largo y amarillo, so we've got a long yellow horn. They could change aspects of it and think of different adjectives, do some dictionary work, and then do different colours. And then that would be nice to stick in the book and then actually write out as it would appear in the story, with kind of like the speech marks or the hyphens if they were writing it in Spanish. And if you really want to, I did write the story each time because I wanted it to be repetitive and quite simple for the children to understand. Every time the character says said. But as teachers, you'll all know that we don't like saying said all the time because it's a bit boring in our writing. It becomes repetitive. So we always try and think of said synonyms. So I thought if you really want to challenge your children, it would be nice to give them a few said synonyms in the foreign language. So I've got some here that you can see and look at the pattern of those said synonyms. So this would be a third person past tense here, wouldn't it? And they all end in O, mainly all end in O with the accent on the top. And the children could spot the pattern then. And I was thinking, wouldn't it be nice if you had a dice game where the children had to say a line from the story? So you can get lots of dice templates online and they write a different said synonym on the dice. And every time they roll the dice in pairs or in small groups, they've got to say that line in that style, whether they shout it, whispered it, or whatever other said synonyms you can think of. Again, I thought that would be quite nice to perform it as a story and have a narrator and have the children saying the speech bits and somebody saying the said synonym parts. And again, you could rewrite a scene from a story, which I think I kind of already said previously, in that kind of taught for writing style where you use a familiar text and adapt and change parts of it. So those are all the resources I've got to show you tonight. Just going to go back to this page. I hope you found that useful. There's probably lots of ideas there that I forgot to mention. Anything that I do in class or any of the other primary languages network teachers in our classes do, I'm sure we'll add to the folder in the primary languages network folder. So any ideas that we get or any work that we do in class, we'll share on our Facebook page so that you can see it. And if you use any of these resources in class and find them useful, please do share them with us and put them on the Primary Languages Network page. I'll send them to us, Facebook page. I'll send them to us via email. It'd be lovely to see how you've used these and adapted them in your class. I found, again, like I did with superheroes, it's been a subject that has just kind of captured that kind of cultural zygote at the moment. And it seems to be really popular with children. And it's just been something that occasion to walk into a year 6 class and hear them say, well, to say to them, right, we're going to start our new topic on dragons and unicorns. And to have year 6 boys and girls go, yes! It's just amazing to think that they're so excited about this unit. And it's been lovely to see them really enjoying drawing their own dragons and unicorns. And I'm looking forward to carrying on with it because I've not actually used the story version of Lost Unicorn yet. But I'm really looking forward to using that in class. A few housekeeping things I just need to mention here is that if you're interested in joining the Primary Languages Network and our VLE, you can contact the email that we've got here, stephstewartprl@gmail.com. And that our Primary Languages Network conference, where we will be talking about some of these, and we've got lots of fantastic guest speakers, is at the 21st of June, Statham Lodge in Warrington. That is part of the package for Primary Languages Network members. So if you've not signed up yet, please sign up and let your head teachers, etc. know that that's happening so they can put the date in the diaries. If you want to find out more details about that and what it costs to come along, you can just go to www.primarylanguages.network and find out more information about that. Again, I'd just like to thank Anna and Irene and Emily for all their help with the resources here, for doing the translations, for doing the sound files in French and Spanish, and for Anna for her fantastic images that she saw of the dragons and unicorns. And I have to say, they have gone down really, really well with the children. I hope you've all enjoyed listening. Thank you very much for the time. Please, please, please do share any pictures that you've done in class. I would love to see it, what you've done in your class and how you've used the resources, how you've adapted them, how you've changed them for your children and how your children have got on with them. All that feedback is amazing for all of us here at the Primary Languages Network. So please do share it with us and I hope you have fun with the unit. Thank you and good night.